Nashville, you are a very special city to The Rock. You want to know why? I had my first match, Nashville Fairgrounds. Nashville Fairgrounds, working in the flea markets, wrestling at used car dealerships for $40 a night, all with the dream of becoming WWE Champion. What The Rock is today and what The Rock will be after Elimination Chamber, the WWE Champion.
He's telling it like it is. Every word true.
Now here comes his opponent.
Paul Heyman, you want to stack the deck against The Rock? You and Vince McMahon, you want to make your stipulations, stacking the deck against The Rock? Well, The Rock will tell you this, what he says every day. Bring it. CM Punk, you want to stand up there and smile? You want to stand up there and smile? Tell you what, I'm going to make it perfectly clear for you. Perfectly clear. What The Rock is going to do, he's going to beat your punk ass this Sunday at Elimination Chamber. And if you walk down that ramp, The Rock will beat your punk ass all over Nashville.
He'll be all the way down to Tootsie's Bar.
What do you think? I got your back.
And there goes Punk. CM Punk going right after The Rock. And here we go. Punk and Rock. Stays away from the chamber. And Punk getting rocked. And now Punk unloading on the champion. Punk at the upper hand here. Well, momentarily. Rock. Oh boy. This may be a happy ending to story time. The most electrifying move. Hey! Oh, you idiots. That bulbous Heyman. Get him, Rock. Punk. Look at Punk. Punk. The double sling to the champ. Kidding me? That is not yours, Punk. You haven't earned it.
Story time's over, Rock. I want you to understand one thing. Every time you want to bring it, because it belongs to me, I'm just going to take it. If you smell what The Rock is cooking.
WBCB presents Pro Wrestling Weekly.
Tell me he didn't just say that.
Call in with a question or comment at 215-949-3232 or 888-922-2149.
The Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, holy yeah.
And now, here's your host of Pro Wrestling Weekly, Fearon Derry.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
Really? Yeah!
Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com. Fearon Derry here with you for another week of a ton of stuff to talk about. A couple of big news and notes. Obviously, you heard the clip from this past Monday's Raw, The Rock and Punk going at it, leading into their WWE Championship match tomorrow night at Elimination Chamber. The Rock defending a WWE title. And the new stipulation added that if The Rock is disqualified or counted out, he will lose the championship belt and CM Punk will be your new WWE champion. Does that sway my thoughts as far as predictions certain to go wrong? We'll find out a little bit later this hour. I'll give you the rundown of the whole card, everything going on with it, and my predictions certain to go wrong for it. But the top story of the week that's gotten buzz both in and out of the wrestling community, wrestling out of the Olympics. This past week, in order to streamline the Summer Olympic Games, the International Olympic Committee announced that they would be removing the sport of wrestling from the 2020 Games. Needless to say, professional wrestlers who got their start in the amateur and scholastic ranks, they were none too pleased. For example, Kurt Angle, gold medalist, won the gold medal in freestyle wrestling back in the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta. Obviously a TNA star, former WWE champion, TNA champion. He responded to the International Olympic Committee voting to drop wrestling by saying this, quote, "We're going to fight this," he said to Fox Sports. "They can't just drop it. They're keeping badminton and that sport where you jump on a trampoline, and they're dropping wrestling. It's just crazy. I don't know what this world is coming to. Things are changing." TNA, they've joined the fight to save Olympic wrestling. Dixie Carter saying in a statement, "The news from the IOC is very disheartening to all of us at TNA, as well as the tens of millions around the world who either participate in amateur wrestling or enjoy watching it in its entertainment form. We need to join together right now. We encourage our own Impact Wrestling community. WWE," Dixie is even reaching out to WWE, "and wrestling organizations worldwide, as well as competitive amateur coaches and athletes, to have a unified voice to make sure wrestling will be an Olympic sport in 2020. They've created an online petition. You can add your name by going to change.org/wrestling. And I've got a bunch more different reactions. Jack Swagger, Cody Rhodes, Dolph Ziggler, Alberto Del Rio, Shelton Benjamin chiming in, Jim Ross, even Spike TV. And we'll get into more of those coming up in a little bit, and we'll get your thoughts. Will this drum up more interest, let's say, in 2016? Like, will you watch wrestling in the Olympics in 2016, and I believe it's Rio de Janeiro, knowing that at least for now there's a possibility that it won't be there in 2020? Now, this doesn't mean that it's totally gone for good. It just means that wrestling will be joining the other 7 kind of on-the-fence sports, for lack of a better term, that are applying for inclusion into the 2020 games. So to kind of use a college basketball example, they're now one of the on-the-bubble sports. Just to let Starship Matt know what the heck is going on. I know that he isn't as into professional wrestling. He's learning all about that, but he knows a lot about the major sports. So I got to find ways to equate it so even Starship Matt can understand. Yes, wrestling is now an on-the-bubble sport for the potential for 2020 games, and they're competing against baseball and softball. I believe karate's in there. Wushu, which is a Chinese martial art, if I remember. I'll get the whole list coming up in a little bit, but yeah, needless to say, the wrestling community in general is just not happy about it. Other news to talk about: CM Punk being shaken up at a Raw Live event a week ago. We'll talk a little bit about that. Mysterio's controversial surgeon may have his medical license suspended or revoked. I got that story coming up. WWE video games, they've got a new home. And WWE Studios has a new comedy project. A special announcement this Monday coming from WWE. And Scott Hall, he might be joining DDP's accountability crib. We'll talk a little bit about that. And obviously the progress that's been going on with Jake the Snake Roberts, who has had his life turned around by Diamond Dallas Page. But another kind of interesting thing that jumped out at me, despite all that news over the course of this past week, the new, I guess, manager or vocal piece for Jack Swagger. Now, a lot of you may know him as Dutch Mantel. Some of you, like me, remembered seeing him about, 18 years ago or so now, as Uncle Zebekiah, manager of Jacob and Eli Blue, when the Harris twins had that gimmick as a tag team, as well as Bradshaw when he was Justin Hawk Bradshaw back in the day. But now he's known as Zeb Coulter, and he has, he and Jack Swagger have an interesting pro-American gimmick, but it kind of makes them the heel. I've been trying to figure out how to describe it, but I guess the best way to do it is to let Jack Swagger and Zeb Coulter explain it in their own words.
I want to introduce a friend of mine. He's a native and a great American, Zeb Coulter.
Fellow Americans, I got a question for you. What is wrong with America? Zeb Coulter knows what's wrong. Jack Swagger knows what's wrong. But I think most Americans have forgotten what is wrong with America.
Years ago, me and this man's daddy laid in a jungle in Vietnam with bullets whizzing by our heads. You know why? Because we were real patriots. We were real Americans. And now I look around and I see a country I don't even recognize. I see people with faces not like mine. I see people that I don't even know what they're saying. They can't even talk to me. And I look around and I think, where did all these people come from? But most importantly, I think, how do we get rid of them? We, the people. Americans, real Americans know the truth. Zeb Coulter knows the truth. Jack Swagger knows the truth.
I know the truth.
Because this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Not the land of the free and the home to whoever wants to cross our borders. This is a real American. It's our country. It's our land to protect and defend. Because we are real patriots, real Americans, and remember, we the people.
So that's some kind of something, to say the least. It sounded like they were setting up a program between Jack Swagger and Alberto Del Rio, and it almost sounded like they were leaning in kind of an anti-immigration, almost like, you know what? Since Linda couldn't get into the Senate, we're going to use the WWE as kind of a political pulpit, for lack of a better term. I know it seems a little weird, the direction that particular thing was going. And I guess maybe after he said it, because it sounded a little too off, maybe there was some backlash. Last night on SmackDown, it sounded a little more in tune with what they were going with, and this had me a lot more on board than after hearing the initial shock on Monday.
Fellow Americans, we the people. You know, it says in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, but it's the choices you make that define you. Do you end up to be a great patriot like Jack Swagger, or a great patriot like Zeb Coulter, or a real American like Jack Swagger or Zeb Coulter? Or do the choices you make resemble this man right here, this clown who cares more for his hair and his tan than he does the country he lives in? You people are not blind, but you refuse to see. Our eyes are wide open. This country is broken, and we know how to fix it. Jack Swagger, great man, great patriot, and a real American, knows how to fix the problem. It starts right here. Remember, we the people.
So who'd have thought? Who would have thought that merely insulting the fans for caring more about their hair and their tan than their country would get vehement boos across the way? I can't tell you the last time that there was this type of American patriotism being booed. I don't even. It's kind of it's backward. It's against the grain, but I gotta say I kind of like it. I'm kind of curious to see where they're going with it, with the Elimination Chamber, Swagger in the match, one of the 6 participants vying for that number 1 contender slot for the World Heavyweight Championship, one of the 7 matches, I believe, on the Elimination Chamber card, and I'll go over those coming up on the other side of a timeout. We've also got room for your calls, as well as some Facebook feedback. Plenty to talk about. I've got more reactions to the Olympic Committee decision taking wrestling out of the Olympics for the 2020 Games, and now the fight to bring it back. Also, we have a couple of matches at least partially set for lockdown coming up 3 weeks from tomorrow. We'll delve into those and the setup for those on the other side of a timeout as well. 215-949-3232 or toll free at 888-922-2149. Those are the ways to reach us. You can also hop in on Pro Wrestling Weekly's Facebook fan page, WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly. And a little bit of an interesting factoid, as I found out from my preceding host, the loose cannon Eric Gargiulo, this past Wednesday marked an anniversary for the show. This past Wednesday, February 13th, 14 years ago, back in 1999, was the debut show of what was then known as Pro Wrestling Radio. And we're keeping the tradition going 14 years later, the longest running pro wrestling talk show on terrestrial radio in the country. You've got it right here. This is Pro Wrestling Weekly here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.